Hi, good morning. We will start this seminar about information integrity, democracy, media education, thanking ECA, USP for this opportunity to be here after a good sequence of events, first of all in Salvador, after in Brasilia, and right now in São Paulo. I'm very happy to be here with you, all of you, in this opportunity. And we will have two sessions. The first one dedicated to information integrity, regulation, policies, and media. And after this, we will have time to talk about information integrity and media literacy. So, before of these two discussions, we will have time to listen and to thank again Professor Denis de Oliveira, our chief here of the department, representing the authorities of the University of São Paulo and the professors, techniques, and students here. Please, an applause to Professor Denis de Oliveira. Thank you, Professor.
Good morning, ladies. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Denis Oliveira. I am a full professor of Department of Journalism and Publishing Department, and I am subchief. And I, in this moment, represent Professor Wagner Souza Silva, the chief of department. I think that it's very important, this discussion about the criticism of social technology, social network, because I hope that I think that it's very important these technologies are connected for the human rights and democratic values. Then I hope that this seminar is very great and it's very important for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Denis. We will have the presence in person of Merle van Berkum, Beth Saad, and Vitor Blotta. But before, we will count on the presentation of the Professor Juliano Domingues. Juliano, if you listen to me, please turn on your camera, and we will have time to talk in a few seconds. Just a moment, people, because maybe Juliano is not necessarily listening to us here, but with the technology in favor of us, maybe Juliano listen to us by cell phone. Juliano, could you make your presentation, please?
Hi. Vocês me escutam? Are you listening?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers for the invitation and for the opportunity to take part in this important discussion. I would like to say thank you, especially to I'm very glad to join colleagues and institutions committed to reflecting on such urgent issues as information integrity, democracy, regulation, and media education. My name is Juliano Domingues. I'm a professor and researcher at the Universidade Católica de Pernambuco, Recife, here in Brazil. And I'm currently president of Intercom, the Brazilian Society of Interdisciplinary Communication Studies. To make the best use of our time, I have prepared a brief test to read. I will follow a simple path. First, I will say a few words about my research agenda in the field of media system, regulation, and democracy. Then I will present some elements from a more recent line of work on the regulation of video on demand in Brazil. After that, I will briefly introduce Intercom as a historic space for debate on issues very close to the theme of this seminar. And finally, I will close with a short reflection on the importance of expanding networks such this one. My work as a research has long focused on relationship between media system and democracy, the quality of democracy. More specifically, I'm interested in how institutional settings, regulatory models, and political disputes help shape the communication environment in which democracy actually operates. In recent years, this agenda has led me to look more closely at current process of media change, especially those related to platformization and the growing central role of digital distribution systems. One of the main questions that has shaped my recent work is, how do new communication services become objects of regulation, and what kinds of political and institutional disputes emerge around them? At this point, if I may connect my remarks more directly to the theme of regulation addressed in this panel, I would like to share some few findings from the research agenda that we have been developing collaboratively with a national research network supported by CNPq, the Brazilian National Council of Scientific and Technological Development. This project brings together colleagues from 4 other universities, including Professor Otton Jambeiro. The focus of this research is the regulation of video on demand in Brazil, VOD, a topic that is very much on the agenda today. And if you allow me a brief local reference, I came from Recife. I'm speaking from Recife, a city with a strong audiovisual tradition and more recently associated with production, such as The Secret Agent, nominated for 4 Oscars and currently available on Netflix. This example, in a way, shows how closely connected local production, global platforms, and regulatory debates have become. This question is at the center of the research we have been developing on the regulation of video on demand, or VOD, in Brazil. In this work, we are trying to understand how the issue entered the regulatory agenda, how its development over time, and why some proposals moved forward while others did not. The research is based mainly on historical institutionalism, but it also draws on the economic theory of regulation and the multiple streams approach. In terms of methods, we have been working with process tracing, and document analysis, focusing on the institutional spaces such as the National Congress, the Ministry of Culture, and the Conselho Superior de Cinema. What this research has shown quite clearly is that regulation is never just a neutral technical response to technological change, as we all know. It is always shaped by disputes among actors with unequal resources, different institutional positions, and very different capacities to influence public debate and policy design. In the Brazilian case, one of the findings that has emerged from our recent work is the presence of important asymmetries in the representation and influence, especially in the early stage of agenda formation. These asymmetries often favor highly organized and economically powerful actors, including transnational streaming platforms. This, in turn, raises broader questions about regulatory capture, policy imbalance, national audiovisual autonomy, and the future of media diversity. I believe this debate speaks directly to the concern of this panel. When we discuss information integrity, we are not dealing only with false content or disinformation in a narrow sense. We are also dealing with the broader structures, through which information circulates, visibility is distributed, and public communication is organized. In that sense, debates on regulation are central to democratic life. That is also why this conversation connects closely with the history of Intercom. Intercom is the largest and oldest academic association in the field of communication in Brazil. We are now close to 50 years of uninterrupted activity. Over this long history, the association has been consistent space for critical reflection on media, democracy, public policy, freedom of expression, and the social responsibilities of communication. In other words, the themes presented in this seminar are very much part of the intellectual and institutional history of Intercom. Defend a democratic media environment has long been one of the values that animate our academic community. In this context, I would like to mention that Intercom 2026 Congress will take place in Brasilia under the theme Media Education for a Geopolitics in Transformation. We consider this a very meaningful theme for the present moment because it connects communication, power, education, and global change in a very productive way. We are also honored that Professor Dayatuso, president of IAMCR, will be our keynote speaker. His presence will certainly help us to deepen this international dialogue and reinforce the importance of intellectual cooperation across institutions, countries, and research traditions. Let me conclude by saying that I hope meetings like these do not end when the session is over. I hope they create new connections, new research partnerships, and new forms of institutional cooperation. The challenges before us are profound. They involve regulation, public policy, education, democratic resilience, and the quality of the information environment itself. No single institution, discipline, or country can respond to them alone. That is why networks matter, that is why dialogue matter, and that is why gatherings like this one are so valuable. I hope this meeting will lead to concrete results and help us expand even further a shared network committed to the defense of democracy and to the construction for a more just world. Thank you very much, Paulino.
Thank you, Juliano.
Thank you, Juliano, for this presentation. We will try to manage these technical conditions here, people.
Could I stay here, connect, Paulino? Can I hear you?
Yes, please, if you have time, Juliano, please be with us. Are you
Okay.
keep this microphone open during the presentation? So, the next presentation will be made by Professor Vitor Blotta. I will try to open this microphone to facilitate the communication with Juliano in Recife, thanking since then the participation of Patricia Blanco here, arriving in our auditorium. Vitor, the time is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
I hope we can solve the technical problems. Okay, great. I want to thank Fernando Paulino for organizing our seminar. Also CAPES, DAD, and the universities involved, UNB, Federal University of Santa Catarina, Unesp, and ECA USP. I think this our theme is very important. I want to thank the presence also of our students here from ECA. This week we don't have classes because of a holiday, but they are here, so thank you. Muito obrigado. So I organized a quick talk about the concept of information integrity, and I'm going to try to relate it to the challenges we have in our public sphere, in our digitalized public sphere nowadays, especially making use of United Nations documents on information integrity, which influence, inspire policies, specific policies here in Brazil, especially made by our Secretary of Communications connected to the presidency. So the idea of information integrity is really connected to trying to realize and transform the principle of freedom of speech into digitalized environments. So it's how we can exercise our freedom to seek, to impart, to receive, and to hold opinions and information and ideas without interference. So this is the definition from the Article 19 from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And also, as the UN document states, the integrity of information implies a pluralist information space that defends human rights, pacific societies, and a sustainable future. This includes a promise or a compromise, a promise that the digital era will promote trust, knowledge, and individual choice for all people. So, but I want to problematize what is integrity. What does integrity actually mean? And if we can actually make it effective as a form of policy, as a form of media education, and a form of care through our digital spaces. So integrity, as the dictionary says, Michael's dictionary, for example, online, it has two sorts of meanings, integrity. So in one sense, integrity has to do with something that is intact, of wholeness. So can we really think realistically and also normatively, let's say, with the idea of integrity, that our information flows and the interactions we have in digital spaces and other media spaces can be actually whole, inteira in Portuguese, or without interferences. So it's a very strong normative and idealistic principle. But it also has to do with, so it's more quantitative aspect. It has to be whole and intact without distortions, for example. And in another sense, it has to do with ethical conduct. So it has to do with honesty, also innocence or purity of character. So I'm always problematizing this concept because I think it's very strong, normative, and idealistic, but at the same time, it can lead us to policies and ways that we can think about this this value. Another legal norm that helps us to understand what integrity means is the access to information law in Brazil, and our public institutions have the duty to promote integral, authentic, and also primary informations, so from public agents and public institutions. And what does integrity mean in the Article 4th of number 7 of our, or number 8 of our Article 4 in the Access to Information Law? Integrity means the quality of unmodified information, including when it means to origin, the traffic, and the destiny of the information. So we have to know what is the source, we have to understand how it navigates, and we have to understand its destiny. So it's this idea of integrity of information that we have in our freedom of access law. So it's a duty of the public institutions to observe this integrity, authenticity, and primarity of information, and it has to be updated always. So I'm also thinking here of information in more specific sense, strict sense here, is unmodified and information that is not disrupted in from its origin and when it circulates. Another very important aspect of information integrity policies is the idea of information ecosystem. And I tend to think that this analogy that we make with an environmental ecosystem has to be more seriously made, this analogy. Because what is an ecosystem actually? So also in a dictionary definition, it's a natural means through which community of animal and vegetable or plant organisms and their interrelations. So it's a system formed by this community of animal and plant organisms and their interrelations. And it also has to do with the concept of biogeocenosis. This means that ecosystems, they tend to eliminate superfluous and morbid elements of their of the planetary life of the organism. So if you are thinking about here of how to eliminate, how to mitigate disinformation and hate speech from the digitalized spaces, we have to think about how we relate in not only animal earth elements, but also human and robotic, mechanic elements as well. So, and also, if we use the analogy of how these interrelations in ecosystems occur, they do it in more harmonic and less harmonic ways. So an example of less harmonic interrelations is parasitism. So can we think in some way that the logic of advertising through the economy of attention and the use of personal data by digital platforms is a form of parasitism of the information ecosystem. And what does parasitism mean? It means that one organism takes the place, as a hóspede in Portuguese, and lives through the energy of the other, and causing damage and even death. And our Secretary General in the United Nations talks about this. It's a matter of life and death, because when we are dealing with public issue topics, or public public health issues, it's a matter of life and death. Now we're talking about vaccines, campaigns, and nowadays we are having here with the children the return of diseases that we thought were eliminated. So it's a matter of life and death as well. But also we can think about other relations, interrelations between these within these ecosystems, such as mutualism or commensalism. I don't know if I'm using this neologism in English, but I think this is right in English as well. Commensalismo and mutualismo. So in mutualism and commensalism, for example, there is an association of two or more individuals of different species in which the benefit of one does not result in a damage to the other. So mutualism is also it's a win-win situation, and that's how I believe we can think about the relations between the different actors who are within the information the integrity of information policies. So we have here the partners who we are thinking about. So technology companies, of course, so the digital platforms, artificial intelligence actors, AI, advertisers, other private sector actors, so for example, private hospitals, or other media professions, news media, researchers in civil society, which has to deal a lot with us, also states and the United Nations, so nation states and United Nations. So is it possible for us to believe or to envision this ecosystem in which these actors can develop their activities in a more commensalist or mutualist relation other than parasite relations? So it's very difficult. There are a lot of intersectionalities between these actors. So in unequal relations and parasitic or parasite relations, but I think the type of policies we have to imagine have to deal with these relations, with these unequal power relations between these different sections or these different actors. Another concept that's very important for us, and I think this is maybe the more problematic one in the UN principles of information integrity, is the concept of digital platform, because this is changing a lot in our scientific field. We have Juliano here from Intercom. We have, unfortunately, Professor Iluska couldn't come, and she's also involved, and also in research groups at the Association for Postgraduate Programs in Communication here in Brazil. We are thinking about digital platforms, and what they actually means and what they actually do, what is the nature of and the characteristics of digital platforms. So here in the UN principles of information integrity, digital platform is seen as, in my view, in my interpretation, as a tool, as digital services. And digital services that enable people to do a lot of activities. So exchange information for news consumption, exchange information to have access to public services, exchange information and use telecommunication applications. So, but I think this is kind of epidermical concept. It's much deeper than this digital platform. So nowadays, for example, in this research group of COMPOS, the Communication Association of Postgraduation Programs, there's a digital materialities group with Raquel Recuero, Carlos D'Andrea, researchers who are thinking about digital platforms in a more profound way as social technical infrastructures. So it's not just a service, it's not just an app. It's a social technical infrastructure. This means that this changes how economy is developing, this changes our values, this changes our news consumption, this changes the relations we have in how we organize ourselves socially. So it has to do with cybernetics. It's all about error and success of how we interact with these ever-changing gadgets and applications and affordances, as we say, right, in English. So in this sense, it does not have to do only with moderation of freedom of speech. It has to do with information sovereignty. It has to do with regulations for economic, the exploitation of economic area. For example, digital communications, digital environments. So if we regulate radio and television frequencies only through contracts with the state and with private actors who have to prove they have technical abilities and resources to have a television channel and to have a radio channel. In this sense, the digital platforms, they only have to have a contract with a telecommunications company, and they are not, let's see, they are not regulated in this more economic sense. So this is very important, it's very different, it's not just about freedom of speech and other human rights. So there's some two other things I want to talk about. Here, when the UN document talks about how to moderate freedom of expression and legislation and policies for protecting information integrity, they use the same principles they have for freedom of expression. So we can only regulate if it's legal, if there is a legal document talking about, for example, disinformation or hate speech. We have to have, has to be reasonable when we interfere in freedom of expression. It has to have proportion. It has to have a legitimate end. So also we include here the Rabat plan, which has to do with hate speech and discriminatory discourses. And they take into account who is speaking, what is the content, what is the context, so what is the extension of this speech. So, and we have to deal with other criteria here to identify discriminatory speech. But is this enough? That's what I'm thinking. Is this enough? Okay, maybe this is one part. Maybe it has to do with content. But we also have to think about economic aspects. So Professor Juliano is talking about VOD regulation. So streaming companies, streaming services do not pay taxes for the audiovisual sector here in Brazil. And so there's a strong move and pressure for this to happen. So it has to do also with economics and also has to do with different aspects. So for example, different media systems having to, that need to have different powers and different possibilities in a media policy. So I want to just end talking about 4 different models of platform and digital communication regulations, which I think could work and could help us thinking of information integrity in different levels and to really try to protect our information ecosystem. So we have a first regulation model, which is of non-intervention, non-state intervention. So it's the more liberal model that says, that enshrines the Article 19 of our Civil Internet Code, and also internet regulations in the US, for example. So it says that only after a legal and judicial decision can a platform be held accountable for human rights violations. Only after the judiciary decides that there is a violation and they should eradicate this information. After that, because the platforms are becoming more powerful and there are a lot of hate speech and disinformation and misinformation also in our systems, we start to see a lot of regulations that has to do with content. So it's content model, and this content model tends to be the most difficult one because it can damage freedom of speech. So if you think about how to define disinformation, how to define what can be and what cannot be said and circulated in the digital spaces, we tend to we have the risk to becoming more censored and to create censorship and to have less freedom of speech. But the last regulation from our judiciary, from our Supreme Court, brings some elements, for example, terrorism, for example, racial, ethnic, gender discrimination, violence, and exploitation of children. So these are contents that the platform should, without the need of judicial decision, take measures. There's now two other models that I think are very important. One is transparency. So this is also present in the regulation made by our judiciary. So that the big platforms have to have reports, transparency reports, to how they are intervening and how they are diminishing the risks of systemic disinformation or hate speech. And also this environmental model, which I think has to do with how we think about each actor and what is their role, what is its role in this ecosystem, and how we can really demand actions, and in a meaning that public information is a public good, but also a infrastructure and a part our existence. So this is why information integrity connects to all sustainable development, the goals of sustainable development. So I think this, when we try to balance these four types of media regulations, and also other discussions that we can talk about later, we can maybe try to create this more harmonic relations between the different actors within digital media ecosystems. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for your attention. Maybe we can translate some words that you didn't understand or I didn't say it correctly. Thank you, bye-bye.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Professor Vitor Blotta. We will have time right now to listen to Professor Beth Saad. Thank you, Beth, for the cooperation. And the time is yours.
Thank you, Fernando. Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning. Thank you for the invitation, Fernando, to talk about it's an important issue that occurs all over the society and especially in the journalism. I have a quick intervention that I think will be totally linked on what Vitor has exposed. And it's a short resume about two contents that recently were issued to our journalistic society and researchers. One is the report published by Momentum Task Force. The report was issued in 2025, and the name is Journalism and Artificial Intelligence Impacts on Brazilian Publishers. It's online at the site of Momentum Task Force. And the other was issued last week by Reporters Without Borders, and the name is Future of Journalism. I participated in the process of building this report in a very interesting method, the scenario method, and it's it was an important experience to understand what is happening in the relationship of journalism as an important component of our society to maintain democracy, free speech, and so on, and what is happening with all the other issues that we face every day, and how journalism could be present and be important and legitimate as an issue, as a component in this scenario. So I have a small resume of these two reports, and I'll read it for you because it will be easier to understand. So, based on these studies, journalism should not be merely considered as a tool of delivering information, and this is important. It's in fact a fundamental public good. It's a cornerstone of democratic life, and when journalism is practiced with rigor, ethics, and verification, journalism allows society to understand reality and engage in meaningful public debate. So it was very interesting that in both reports, the idea of a journalism practiced with rigor and ethics and transparency, it's something, it's a pillar for this all this mess we are living. And this is very important and has a link to us here in the university, in the journalism course, that we must reinforce every time this idea of rigor, a method of making journalism, okay? Another thing that the reports show, it's the scenario of a permanent crisis, excuse me. Because everybody said, oh, the crisis, journalism is in a crisis. It's eternal, it's in crisis, okay. So we feel overwhelmed with all this crisis, you know? We have the economic crisis, which has weakened the sector financially. We have geopolitical tensions with the rise of authoritarian governments. We are facing this at the present moment. There's a technological crisis marked by the lack of guarantees of fundamental rights in the digital environment. Why regulation is important. And at the same time, democracies themselves are under strain, facing polarization and repression. And perhaps most concerning, there is a growing crisis in trust in journalism, often expressed through hostility toward those who worked to investigate and report the facts. And here is, I have a long research about violences and harassments against journalists, and this is a real problem and an effective mood that we live here, not only in Brazil, but all over the world, against the people, the professionals who report the facts. Okay. So in this context, it becomes clear that the role of the state is central. Traditionally, we have understood that the state should not interfere in the flow of information, which is true. But current debates suggest otherwise. Straightening journalism today requires more than neutrality. It requires action. We need robust regulatory frameworks and well-designed public policies. This is important. Where are the Brazilian public policies around all these issues? well-designed public policies that can ensure that the sustainability and diversity of journalism, combat disinformation, and promote media literacy across the society. Okay. Another major challenge we face is the rise of artificial intelligence and digital platform. This is it's obvious but problematic, no? Which are accelerating a process known as disintermediation. This is the point. How can we do robust journalism with disintermediation of the audience, the distribution, the actors in the system? Okay. In simple terms, this means removing journalism from its traditional role as a mediator of information. We have to re-understand a resignification about what is the role of journalism in the society, not only the distribution of information. We have some scenarios proposed about this at Reporters Without Borders, and there is one that shocked everybody, but it's true, and we live on it. It's the end of journalism. The scenario, how can we imagine the end of journalism for the next 10 years? It's what the report says. Where the end is provoked by the human mediation replaced by AI systems and coordinated propaganda. The results are, it's a fragile democracy shaped by conspiracy theories and collapse of public trust. But we know that Brazilian journalism companies are increasingly dependent of the platforms and of the technologies that the platforms offers. You know? And this gives a scenario of imbalance of power that risks silencing quietly the voices of the legitimated voices that journalism could offer. So, what can we do? If we can do something, no? We have two ways that we can work over this. Considering that journalism is a public good, must be supported by a strongly regulation. And also, media literacy becomes something very important for all for all the society, not only here at the university or inside the newsroom, so on. Everybody have to have some degree of media literacy, and now some degree of AI literacy. Okay. So we are not speaking about a regulation that the state will have a role of censor, for example, with regulation, no? But the regulation must support the independent journalism, no? Must ensure transparency and must invest in media education. First, we have three strategies of resilience that we at university and the newsrooms, the business of journalism, have to think about and to work on this. The first one is radical transparency, making journalistic methods clear so people can distinguish facts from opinion and manipulation. Today, everybody, oh, it's on Instagram, oh, it's a WhatsApp group. And this is very problematic. So radical transparency is something that it's a pillar that here in our School of Journalism we must to reinforce every day. A second strategy is collaboration, building stronger networks between media organizations, universities, and the justice system to protect press freedom and to protect journalism and the professionals themselves. So it's what we are doing here. And the third strategy is self-censorship. It's resist to self-censorship. So ensuring that holding power accountable remains not negotiable mission and even hostile environments. Because many times we see some journalists, some newsroom that and their professionals to have some self-censorship against some content that could be complex and that could defeat the business model of their company. So this is a problem. Well, we can conclude so that the future of democracy in Brazil is inseparable from the future of journalism. And journalism must not adapt to technological change. It must actively shape it, ensuring the reliable, verified information that remains the center of the public life. So we have so many works. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Betty. I think you summarized the spirit of these events dedicated to information integrity in these days. And to finalize this panel with the last presentation, we have the honor to count on the presence of Merle van Berkum. Merle is research at the TU Dortmund University and has a lot of knowledge and experience dedicated to these topics involving information integrity. Merle, bitte, the time is yours.
Maybe I would put the keyboard there, so I can click the next slide. Can I put the keyboard over here?
I'm not sure, maybe I can help you.
I think it's long enough. Yes. Okay, hello everyone, and thank you to the great presentations we already heard, which give me a great transition to my presentation. And thank you also for hosting me here all the way from TU Dortmund. And you talked about AI literacy, which will give me a great transition, as I said, to my presentation. So I will talk to you about a project that I led, which was an EU-funded project, but I think it's also applicable in the Brazilian context and very international, because I feel like you all are probably on social media or use some kind of social media platform. And to start with, I would like to ask just to nod. Do you know this guy? Yes? Okay, I figured. And I just want to jump back 1.5 years ago, where you already see here this subtitle, where Mark Zuckerberg, the boss of Meta, actually said that fact-checking is too politically biased. Now let that sink in, that he actually said fact-checking is too political. And then on all his platforms, he actually said like that he doesn't want to have any fact-checking, he just wants so-called community notes. And that means that you as users can kind of correct someone or can like do the fact checking, which obviously is not neutral, it's not based on science, so it's just like people saying, that's true or that's not true. So you can imagine what kind of things are pushed on these platforms and what kind of things are maybe censored more on these platforms. So yeah, that's kind of where I want to start, to ask what this actually means. So this guy you probably don't know, I would say, because this is another example of what platforms can actually do. So this is Călin Georgescu. He's from Romania, which is a European country, and they had the elections 1.5 years ago as well. And he was totally unknown. Imagine someone winning the elections in Brazil that you have never heard of. Like, he's not a proper politician. He wasn't really known. But then this guy actually won the elections. And he won the elections only because there were so many TikTok accounts that spread his message. So there were thousands of TikTok accounts, and this was a curated campaign to kind of let this person win. And then when this was uncovered, so he won the elections, and then there was all this like research going on, like how could a guy that is totally unknown win the elections? And then we saw that it was a Russian campaign actually orchestrated to make him win. And then they had a rerun of the elections. So kind of after the elections, the system kind of corrected this and then said, no, we need another, we need other elections so that this can be corrected. And then of course he did not win because he did not have the support of all these like TikTok bots. So these two examples kind of are the introduction for this project, because we have this situation. So we have this so-called post-truth era. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's when, yeah, you're nodding. It's when we no longer believe in these scientific facts. For example, climate change is being questioned. All these things that are actually scientifically relevant are being questioned. So we have this as a kind of a situation. Then we also have an increasing mistrust in organizations, in institutions, also in media. Maybe you feel that in your daily life as well, that things are being questioned, that you get so-called alternative facts being sent around via WhatsApp, for example. Then you see also the geopolitical tension, of course, is increasing with all these different players, with all these conflicts that are ongoing. And this kind of creates, I call it, corrupt narrative market, where all of these different narratives are floating around. Some person says this, another person says something else, but there is no really trust in sources anymore, and also sometimes no trust in science as well. And now with the project that I will introduce, we kind of wanted to move beyond just fact-checking, where you say, this is true, this is false. For example, when I say Donald Trump is the president of Brazil, you can say, no, that is false. It's just an easy thing to fact check. But then we see in this like post-truth era, we see that it's not that easy anymore. There are things being twisted, or some things are being left out, for example. So it's not that easy to just say, this is false, this is true. But it's more a question of how information are being like twisted, what kind of things are being exaggerated, for example, or as I said, being left out. So this kind of was the base of where we started our project. And now just a brief introduction of the project so that it's not so abstract for you anymore. So we looked at 6 countries, only European countries, and also included 2 more languages, which are Russian and English. Russian for Europe is very relevant because there are loads of campaigns actually being orchestrated by Russia when it comes to disinformation, so we had to include this language as well, even though we didn't include Russia as a country where we did research. And then we looked at 3 topics which are relevant, maybe also you can relate to them, but mostly relevant in the European context for us. So the war in Ukraine is very relevant in terms of disinformation. There are loads of disinformation floating around when it comes to this, because Russia is an active part in this conflict. Then we have disinformation on LGBTQI+ rights and freedom, and lastly, European elections, like the one in Romania, for example, that I told you about in the beginning. So these were the 3 case studies that we wanted to look at, how disinformation spreads and what kind of narratives, as I said, by narratives I mean something which is not completely false, not completely true, but like something in between where it's more difficult to tell. And then these are the platforms that we looked at. I think you know most of the symbols. They are the most relevant social media platforms, I would say. Okay, so now it's going to get a bit more technical. I don't know how much you know about AI technical things. I'm a journalist myself, so I wasn't involved in the AI technical part, but I'm happy to present it to you because it's interesting, I think, to get some insights on that as well. Because in this project we developed an AI tool to help journalists uncover these nuanced disinformation. So when you start working as a journalist, for example, you could use this tool to type in something that you read on social media, for example, to see where it originated, is it true or not? And so we have 3 kind of components of this AI tool. I will also have a QR code later so that you can click it and use it on your phone as well to get a better idea. So now the theoretical insights first, and then you can have some practical insights when I show you the QR code. So the first thing that we did, as I said, we wanted to go more on the linguistic level. So not like these completely false things, like, as I said, Donald Trump is the president of Brazil. No, that's not the thing we wanted to look at, but more the more nuanced things in certain sentences and certain messages. So imagine it's like a linguistic class, or like in Portuguese class, you would have these sentences, these rhetorical figures. Maybe thinking back, you can still remember part of this. So for example, metaphors that only you as Portuguese speakers can understand, and I couldn't, for example. These like hidden messages, so-called dog whistles, which only certain groups can also understand, which maybe I couldn't. So this was like the linguistic level that was really important to us, and this kind of helped us to understand how disinformation spreads and to also see these like cultural specifics, you know, because maybe in Brazilian Portuguese something is different than in European Portuguese, or for us in, let's say, French, there are certain messages that we wouldn't have in German. And then you can see here some screenshots where we developed a code book coding all these metaphors of already existing fact-checking articles to see what is out there, what techniques are being used by these disinformative actors. What that means is that we needed not just one tool, let's say, but different features in our AI tool. So we have this narrative level, and then we also have the network level. So for example, as a journalist, you come across a post, and you think, this is kind of weird, but it's just an account that has like 3 followers, it's not relevant. But this tool would also have an additional feature which shows you a network. So for example, if you think it's just one account, but you run this through the AI tool, you see that it's maybe thousands of accounts with just 3 followers, but like having these thousands of accounts, it's so much more than you think. So it's not just this one account, but then you would see these networks as well, which for example in the Romanian elections would have been very helpful to uncover this campaign before it actually had this big of an impact. So that's what I mean by different features. You can see them here in the screenshot behind that. Yeah, so they also see screenshots again. So we had these different the different topics I told you about: war in Ukraine, elections in Europe, LGBTQI+. So we kind of applied the codebook to all these different topics. Then lastly, what we mean here, I don't know, have you heard of LLMs, large language models? It's kind of the basis for an AI tool. So large language models, just for those of you who don't know, it's like huge amounts of data and text. So as I said, we had a code book, and we coded. So all of our partners for every country coded so many articles so that you have huge amounts of data. that you can feed into, for example, if you use ChatGPT or Gemini, that you would, before to train this model, you would feed all the data into the model to help it then understand and help you, for example, when you use ChatGPT, give you the correct answer. So we had a large language model, and what we wanted to test, what this means is if an AI tool can be as good as a human coder. If an AI tool can uncover all these facts at such a short period of time, for example, you would need so many hours to code and to understand all these articles, but an AI tool can do this in like a second. So we wanted to see if an AI tool is as good as, for example, you as a human coder. We cannot really say yes or no with this hypothesis yet because this is still ongoing, but that was something we wanted to test because there are always, you know, for example, if you use AI in your studies, you will always see that sometimes it will give you an answer that does not really make sense. So there's always kind of the danger of getting wrong information. Yeah, so that again, the networking cluster. So maybe, so that it's easier to understand the question, how does it look in practice? If you like, you can scan the QR code and then after the session, scroll through it. This is still a beta version. I will go to the side. This is still a beta version, so it only has the 3 topics that I told you about. So you cannot put anything Portuguese in there just yet. It's more like understanding how it works, so you can click through it. It looks very complicated at first. You may need 5 or 10 minutes to make yourself familiar with the tool. But you can also ask me in our break about the module, so I can about the model, so I can tell you where you find what. But as I said, it's just a beta version, so you cannot put your own articles in there just yet. Okay, so now turning to media literacy. So the presenters before me, they already said that media literacy is quite important. AI literacy is quite important. And so we thought we also needed a component of media literacy in our project. So we had an already existing platform, which is called COPE, which was another project that we did, European funded again. And this is a platform where you have massive open online course, short MOOC, so massive open online courses, on there for journalism students. So it's for free. You as a journalism student would create an account, and you can choose from all these different courses focusing on journalism. And then we wanted to do also a prompt module of our project on this platform. And just maybe the process that we approached this, just quickly, I wanted to show you because we try to really involve our students when we develop the module. So, because we wanted to cater to the students' needs, and sometimes I think their level of knowledge when it comes to disinformation and AI is higher than we as professors would maybe think. So we wanted to talk to them, really have a brainstorming session so that the level is not too low, not too high. So we started with this, then we developed a rough structure, I would say. Then again, we met with our students, had another session talking about the structure, asking them if they think it's relevant for them, if it really caters to their needs. Then we created the prompt MOOC, and then finally we now have it in our curriculum, so it's a self-paced online course that the students can do whenever they have time, so that was kind of the process behind it. Now it's getting a bit more technical in terms of pedagogical approach. So when it comes to us as teachers of how to kind of deliver a material, this is a model that we can use. So this is kind of the easiest thing for our minds, let's say, to kind of do is to remember. So you get something, I tell you something, and you remember and repeat it to me. That's very easy. The second level, which gets a bit more difficult, is understanding. Then it comes to applying your knowledge to maybe a new case study, for example, which is a bit more difficult. And then lastly, analyze, evaluate, and create would be like even more difficult. So that's kind of how we structure our material. When we teach something, we try to first cater to the more basic level and then get more difficult kind of as we proceed. So that's how we structured the module, to kind of start with more the remembering tasks, to then get more to the create tasks. For example, our students in the module had to write their own fact-checking article, to really create something, to apply all their knowledge that they got from the module. And then why? So we chose this approach because I think when it comes to AI and to all these things happening, there is so much development going on. And I feel like if I just did this model and tell you, do it this way, next week it can already be outdated and they have another AI tool, they have something which kind of makes this already outdated. So they are so quick in kind of developing all these AI tools for a bad use, to kind of spread disinformation. So we kind of wanted to show our students how they can really sustainably use AI to detect disinformation. So that's why we kind of have this, as I said, remember all the way up to create, to not be like a static piece of knowledge, but to be more dynamic, so that the students really develop new skills that they can apply to changing contexts. So then by reaching the evaluative stage, which was all the way up on the pyramid, they then have like a more critical reflex, for example, so that they can also detect other forms of disinformation that we maybe did not cover in this module. And also what we wanted to do is to have these different exercises in the module that cater to maybe undergrad students, postgrad students, journalists, to also cater to all these different levels of knowledge, because I also think maybe within your friend group you know more about AI and disinformation, other people don't know that much. So we kind of tried to have everything and everyone in this module, so that they, if they have different levels of knowledge. I won't go through all of this, but I have the link to the module later on. So this is just the outline with the different chapters. So if you use the link that I will give you at the end of the presentation and do the module, you will be guided through all these different chapters. Just to maybe point out a few things, so you can see that we have 3 case studies all throughout the module, and they have different levels of difficulty. So we start with the first case study, the one on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Then we go a bit further to disinformation about LGBTQI+ communities, all the way to the final case study of Romania and the elections. So they get more difficult throughout the different chapters. And then we also had the students be a judge on the AI model that we created, so that they also see what we're doing and feel as part of the process as well. This is the structure, but as I said, you have it if you access the module, you will have that as well. Okay, so this is the last real theoretical input on the module. As I said, so we wanted to kind of move beyond just detecting disinformation to really understanding how they are formed, why they are so relevant, because sometimes, for example, someone sends you like an article on WhatsApp, which is so, you feel so agitated, you feel all these emotions, and you want to forward it to someone else, but then maybe take a second to think about why you're so maybe angry or happy when you read this article, because all these like big emotions, they are maybe something where you should think for another second about why they make you so emotional, because maybe there's something wrong with it. So we really wanted to have them develop these analyzing techniques, these evaluating techniques, so that they come from asking, is it true, to more, why was it created to make me feel this way? So more questioning and being more critical in their thinking. This is just a summary of what I just said. So instead of just debunking something where you say, no, Trump is not the president of Brazil, you get these more nuanced disinformation, and understand them in a more critical way, that was kind of our process behind that. So understanding the why, analyzing the how, really being aware of these emotional triggers, and also maybe about the echo chambers you're in. So the filter bubble, for example, on Instagram, you will only see the things that are relevant for you. So being more critical on that. Then finally, coming to the end of my presentation, I have screenshots from the module. So this is the homepage of COPE, where you will see our logo, which is the online course. You will see modules in other languages. They are from other projects, but ours is in English. And you can click on it to kind of go through the module. We have different exercises, we have videos, we have audio messages. So it's all included in this module. Yeah, and there is the link. Feel free to take a picture. You have to create an account, but it's for free. And then you can take all these courses. As I said, ours is in English. You may find others in other European languages, which may look weird, but yeah, there you can find ours as well. Feel free to click through it, ask me questions if you have any. Yeah, and then thank you for your attention.
Thank you, danke schön, Merle, for your presentation. Yonty Friesem, our colleague from United States, France, and around the world, is connected people. And with this, my suggestion is to begin the second part of the seminar with the presentation of Yonty, and after listening to Patricia, and I have some thoughts and ideas as well. And after this, other three presentations, we will reserve a time for debate, questions, and comments and suggestions. Is it okay for you? Okay, because I need to manage this technical connection of Yonty. Yonty is connected with us by my computer and by my cell phone, but I need to put Yonty here in the auditorio's computer. And with this, I ask you for 30 seconds and the patience, okay, in this transition. I already invited our great colleague, Patricia Blanco, and asking for you an applause to Patricia, please. And thank you for the cooperation, Patricia, and thank you for your patience as well. Just a moment. Just a moment,
Okay, we're good? Okay, we're good. Okay, hi everybody. Hi everybody. Okay. So I know we're supposed to talk about information integrity, which is interestingly a very foreign concept, I guess, in some way for the US, especially in the time that we're in right now. But I wanted to share with you how I explained it to journalism students. I'm an associate professor at Columbia, Chicago, and we have a very known journalism program. And there is a class called Media Ecosystem, when we're talking about the different parts, especially in Chicago, that is one of the biggest hub for community journalism. So I was thinking of sharing with you how I'm explaining to the students, and I'm looking forward to having questions and discussion with you and with the other panelists on that. looking at the frame of information integrity. So does all sound good? Hope so. I'm going to share my screen. You'll tell me if you see. Do you see my screen? I hope so. Okay. So so this is an old report you can see from Internews. I don't know if you know this amazing organization, which again, a lot of fundings are in issue right now. But this report from 2014 showed like why information matters, which I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir because obviously you're here because it matters to you, but looking at a lot of different places in the world explaining like how it works. And so what they did in this report, they, as you can see, they talked to different people. They looked at different ways of testing. They compared like between case studies in Japan, Pakistan, Indonesia, Myanmar, Jakarta, fieldwork, and fieldwork in New York. And they took all this information from 2014 and put it together. And this is kind of the conclusion. You can go online and find the full report, which is fascinating and very helpful. Although it's 12 years old, it's still relevant because the amount of work they did there, the field work of interviews and site visits, but also looking at different case studies, lit review, and it was really, really helpful. Yes, there is a very kind of focus on Indonesia and Jakarta, but it is relevant. And this is the main, like if we're talking about theory, this is the main thing that I want my students who are going to be journalists to really think about, which is what is the information needs of the audience, which I don't know if always the journalists are thinking about that. What is the information landscape, the production and movement, dynamics of access, use of information, impact of the information, the social trust, and the influencers. So let's just unpack it quickly, and then I'll move to the example of Chicago. So the information needs is something that community media is based on, and that's where from the legacy or the usual news media, there is a lot of growth. When there is a decrease in legacy media, there's a growth in community journalism in places like Chicago, not all over the US, because there is a very specific look at the needs of the community and addressing that. And so the audience who are reading it appreciate that it's been taking care of their information needs. Now, the information landscape is also an issue. Like, for example, for years, there were what's called news deserts in Chicago. Chicago has 77 neighborhoods, so not all of them had their own media. There was, and still is, the Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, and those are the big like legacy media, but there started to grow different small news organization because the landscape didn't really allow for the people of certain communities to get the news the way that they wanted or they should get the news. So the landscape is obviously a big part of it. Now, production and movement is, and I'll get to an interesting research about this, is who's producing and where they're producing from and how they're producing it, and how the information is moving from one place to another and how we're getting the information. Again, this is very theoretical, but I'll get to the practice of it. The dynamics of access is who has access. Like, as most of the residents of Chicago have cell phones, they don't have the same carrier, they don't have the same program, they don't have the same accessibility to news, which most of them are online. Some of the news outlets decided to print knowing that some population would prefer to have a print actual newspaper in hand to look at. How each one is using their information, that's obviously different for if somebody who's looking for business to know about the stock market versus somebody who is retired sitting at home and looking like, you know, into connecting and seeing what's happening in the neighborhood, for example. So there's different uses of different people. What's the impact? It's also different how each one of the news and the information is impacting in a different way. So that's also part of understanding the dynamic there. The social trust is something that we know is eroding for the last 20 years. There's less and less trust. However, with the concept of community media, there is a growth in trust, because you know who's the reporter, you see the reporter in your neighborhood, you know they're talking about things from your neighborhood, so you have much more trust into this reporter versus reporters that you don't know, or like the big legacy newspapers that you are not sure where they're coming from and their agenda. And the last one is the influencers. And we know that there's now more and more, and that was in 2014, before the whole explanation of influencers the way that we understand them right now. But the whole idea of citizen journalists, and do you believe more like a journalist who is from a legacy media like the New York Times, or an influencer that is sharing their experience and being perceived as more authentic, but not always? And that's a very interesting dynamic that is happening now between TikTok becoming a place for young people to get information. I interviewed an intern 2 months ago, and she explained to me that Instagram is for entertainment, but TikTok is for learning. And I was like, what? And what she meant is that when she's scrolling on TikTok, she's learning things. And so we can assume from that is that a lot of journalism that is happening, again, professional and amateur, is being taken as, you know, the news that youth are consuming from TikTok. So that's something to really think about. So I want to go to the case study of specifically Chicago. And this is super interesting because you can see that this report from the Democracy Fund is from 2018. So this is really long time ago. It's 8 years ago. But what's interesting is that here, when they're mapping all the community media in Chicago, there is a lot of groups that still exist and groups that just started and then became much bigger right now, like Black Club Chicago, which I'm gonna talk about. So Black Club Chicago wasn't existing there, and Harkin, I'm gonna talk about them as like the model of journalism that they're creating to create news integrity from a community perspective. So here is what I was talking about research-wise, that it's super interesting to look at this data from this research that was done in 2020. So this is a map of the greater Chicago area. And you can see like the cover of all those different media outlets. Some of them are more community media, some of them are legacy media. And you can see how much they're reporting about the north downtown, the south of Chicago, and the west part of Chicago. So as you can see here, most of reports are about the center of Chicago. There is somewhere here in the south more, but the west is not getting so much. And there is somewhat reports here in the airport area. And then we can see here Aurora, which is a far suburb to the west. But most of reports are really center and north of the city. Why is that important? Because it's interesting that we're looking at here in purple is how much news article are mentioning crime in Chicago. So you can see there is here, 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 and here, right? And now how much actual crime data is by the police. And now you can see that here and here, there is, so this area in the center is kind of similar to this, but this area it doesn't get as much. And in the south, there is crime, but you can see that there's a focus on this area specifically, right? And here, when they're looking just as a homicide, you see here, because I don't know how much you know about Chicago, but there's a big effort to show from Democrats that Chicago is well, because it's a city who is very liberal with a mayor that is Democrat. So to show that it's well maintained, and actual data shows that because of the way that the mayor is addressing crime, the crime rate have gone down. But from a Republican place, they're trying to show that because it's run by Democrat, it's badly run, and to put Chicago as a place of a lot of murders, a lot of violence. And you see here how the media is not always representing what's actually happening in an authentic way. And you can see that in the airport area, there's not so much, but there's much more report about it, as if it's a big a crime scene. So this is important because we see that the way that it's being talked about is skewed. It's not really showing the reality. And so when we want information integrity, what's happening to the news and how the news consumption is also impacting. This organization called Public Narrative is trying to basically help because they understand that the legacy media is trying to just, sell papers, not necessarily coming from the neighborhoods where the crime are being reported. So they have some kind of presumptuous kind of way of reporting. So Public Narrative is a non-for-profit organization or civil society organization trying to kind of overcome that with offering different supports for community journalism. So the way they're doing it, they want the local journalism of the neighborhood to have more strength, and for the audience to use more community media that will be more related to their information needs. Chicago is one of the biggest cities that have a very strong community media. You can go into savechicagomedia.org, and it's the CIMA, the Chicago Independent Media Alliance. And you'll see that there's a lot of different groups that are doing different things. Those are just some of those. But it's a very small, each one of them, it's a small organization that is looking at a very specific target audience. And the target audience knows that they're working specifically in their neighborhood. And so the trust is bigger, and there is a connection between the reporter and the audience who is consuming those news. And so Public Narrative has been using different ways of doing a community research on the news to help the community media to better understand how to work toward their audience. So you can see, again, you can go to their and see their framework of how to do that research, how to connect between the audience and the journalists themselves. The last model that I want to show, and again, this is how their Public Narrative wanted the voices to be heard, is the model of Hearken, which changed the way that the usual model of journalism works. And for my presentation, I'm going to conclude in 2 more slides, is to show that this model is working in Chicago, but it needs funding and it needs people to really work on it like in other places. But a lot of people are coming to Chicago to learn how it works so they can implement it in their own place. So I don't know if you are familiar with the upside down triangle of like awareness, engagement, conversation, and retention of public as consumer. Now, what Hearken is trying to say, we actually want to have the public as partners. So instead of looking at the audience as their consumer, we want to get their money, we want them to stay with us. is have them as partner, and you change your mindset to have new experiences, to make them really have the understanding that they're part of the news cycle, that they're not just the consumer, the silent consumer, they're active participants in it. And how does that work? So what they've shown is that newsroom and the public like you see in a kind of different ways, and that's what creates the problem of news integrity with audience. However, if we change those relations to start to have like an engaged visitor, that they're become subscribers and then loyal subscribers, and they feel that they're together, there's going to be much better connection between the audience and the news outlets. So what they're saying, and what's been one of the biggest successful model, have been Black Club Chicago, which is basically an online platform for news that is divided into neighborhoods. So the people from Chicago are choosing the neighborhoods that they're wanting to follow, and they know that journalists, they can reach them, they can ask to look at some specific things. So when they're consuming news, they're looking at what they trust and the news that are for their community. So I hope that's really like a short kind of way of showing the strength of Chicago community media in order to strengthen the information integrity that we are experiencing this crisis for 10 years now. So again, thank you. Fernando, I don't know, Q&A is now or after everybody speaks?
Yes, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, so
After your presentation, I will change the set here, but you can follow the audio, okay, and the video by my computer, okay?
Okay.
After this interesting presentation performed by Yonty Friesem, we will have time to count on Patricia Blanco presentation. I will put the slides in the computer in a few seconds. Thank you again, Patri, for the cooperation and the partnership, especially in activities involving media education, media literacy, and information literacy. Patricia is from the Institute Palavra Aberta Institute, and the Palavra Aberta is responsible for a lot of activities dedicated for media education, including Educa Media, and we will have time to follow the presentation about this experience with suggestions and questions related to public policy as well. Patricia, please, the time is yours.
Thank you, Fernando. Hello, everyone. Very nice to be here. So today I'm going to share with you my poor English. This for the beginning of our presentation. So just a quick joke. And Yonty, it's very nice to see you. And I have to share with you that Yonty will be here in Brazil with us in the fourth summit, International Summit of Media Literacy, that will be held in the May 21st at ESPM here in São Paulo, Vila Mariana. So now you can meet him in person that time. So it's very nice. That will be very nice. So let's do it. Just to say that in Palavra Aberta, we have, as Fernando said, Educa Media. Educa Media, it's a media literacy program that has already 6 years. And we are, our main goal is to teach teachers to leverage media literacy and take media literacy in practice at schools. So one of the things that we do, and talking with your presentation that was very nice, is that as we teach teachers to take media literacy at school, we multiply the way media literacy is given to students. So we also believe that media literacy is a very important right now. So Beth just said that it's for today for the empowerment of the citizen, we need to take media literacy, media and digital literacy seriously. So then we can talk about a little bit more. So my presentation is how we integrate, also how we integrate the media literacy at the curricula. So can you share? Can I? Oh, thank you, Fernando. So this was saying, Educamedia was launched in 2019. Palavra Aberta Institute is an NGO that has the main goal to fight and promote freedom of expression, freedom of press, the right for information, and also media literacy, as we believe the citizen that is empowered by media literacy is has the way to do it, to have more empower for his freedom of expression. So it's like a virtual circle. So we do advocacy, we do researchers and materials, civic society programs and partnerships, and PD programs for public schools, and we want to support media literacy policy and practice adopt in local continent. I'm here. Let me do this because then. So our main goal is media literacy for all as a right. So how do we address is by policy, policy making and public policy, supporting and expanding definitions of media literacy. And now, today we use digital and media literacy because we believe there's no way to separate anymore digital and media, because you have to be critical about your digital consumption. So we do this is working with the government and working with the public policies agents to expand the definitions of media literacy. We do advocate for the constant practice of media literacy at the curricula as a practice and as a layer. We believe that media literacy can be addressed not only in the specific subject, but also as a layer of knowledge. And also we do believe that media literacy provides and gives meaning use of technology, so that the way we say that digital and media literacy that has to comes together, and diversity, because we believe although we do need a public policy, a national public policy, we know that media literacy has to do with the context. So the diversity, not only the cultural diversity, but socioeconomic, technology, context, and everything. So here is our website, educamedia.org.br. It's all open for teachers, for families, for population 6+ population, and of course teachers and educators and all the scholars community. It's all open and free for access. We have courses, small ones, like self-guided advanced media literacy practice. So we do have the introduction of media literacy, freedom of expression in the means of media literacy. We do like the pedagogical use for mobile phones, since we have the law that restricts the use of mobile phone at schools. So hate speech is one of the things that we address by our courses and so on. So we do also advocacy and summits to spread the word of media literacy. So I say always say that espalhar a palavra, so spread the word of media literacy. And here we had this summit, the third summit, international summit, was in last May in Brasilia, and this year we will have here in São Paulo. The first one was in São Paulo, and then now we come back to São Paulo for our international summit. We do have some a very good relationship with the policymakers. Here is a meeting that we had with in the Department of Media Literacy at the Secretary of Communication in Brasilia. And also we do spreading the word, as I said, saying that media literacy is not only for students, but it has to be a need, or has to be a new way to look at the information for all the society. So we talk with all the diverse public. Here we're in the LED Rio. LED is a very important education event made for Globo and Fundação Roberto Marinho. We do have podcasts and participation in events around the world. We also support the development of curricula. So here we do have some partnership with Minas Gerais, with Rio de Janeiro, the municipality, and also with Bahia, the state of Bahia, the state of Minas Gerais, the state of Ceará as well. So all our contributions of public policies, we worked with Minister of Education, Minister of the Communication, and also Minister of Human Rights, working with them to give the view of media literacy as a right. So this is our numbers. Since 2019, we already reached 300,000 educators and 30,000 educators certified by Educamedia, and 3.4 million students. So how do we integrate media literacy at the curricula? So we do believe that we need to defend media literacy as a layer, as I said. So in all education practice, so we do have this media literacy guide that is free from download in our website. So it's focused on practice of media literacy, so everyone can have. And also we do have a physical books. So this one is sold in our website. So here, what we can do, as Fernando told me to talk about challenges and opportunities. So here it's, I guess Brazil has now a very good space to grow media literacy, as we have a lot of laws and regulatory advanced since 2021, when we had approved of the national law that works with the connected education policy, and also with the National Digital Education Policy, the PNED, and our Common Core Curricula, the ABNCC, and also the Brazilian Media Literacy Strategy that was in the first launch in November 23, and now last year we had the second version. And now we have also the ECA Digital that talks with how can we extend media literacy for protection and safety of children and teenagers. So how do we integrate in the curriculum? First of all, from individual training, training teachers and also training the audience, articulation with educational guidelines and local curricula. So when we went to Ceará, for instance, we talked with all the teachers, the professors, and the ones who were responsible to develop the cultural digital curricula. So how can we integrate this in practice? So, and respect the autonomy, of course, the networks. We work with this strategic triad that it's offering teacher training, and support construction of the curricula, and also creation of materials and support pedagogical practice. And and then we work with this intentionality of media literacy. Here is what we did in Ceará. Since 2022, we are working with them, training them to make this work in the practice. So here in Rio de Janeiro, here in Rio, that in Recife, and also the curriculums that I showed before, and how we can integrate here in São Paulo, in Minas. So this is our numbers, how we reach the learner circle and the number of the students reached. And the challenge that we see here, so we have a very important and great opportunity to put media literacy in practice, because since last year, now media and digital literacy are mandatory for all last year of elementary schools and also high schools level. So we are trying to work with the states for them to make this real, not only in the paper. So first of the challenge that we face to scale even more media literacy is the lack of understanding. We do have a very poor understanding of the media literacy as this umbrella of knowledge, not only to fight fake news. Media literacy is important to fight disinformation, but but media literacy much more than that. It's beyond fake news. It's beyond misinformation. We have to show how media literacy is important, for instance, for the integration, the information integrity. So it is to understand the importance of regional news outlets, for instance. Also, open up space in the curriculum. Now we do have this mandatory law, so I guess this won't be a problem anymore, but it's still it's a challenge, because we have to find this location at the curriculum. Teacher training. We have 2.4 million teachers all over Brazil. That is this number, the teachers that are in the school right now. So how can we train them to give them power and to take media literacy at practice? So other challenge: low offer of pedagogical and courses address digital and media literacy. We don't have still the subject of media literacy at the education level in the university. So we are working with this, with National Education Council to make this as mandatory for all the pedagogical and licentiate courses. And the impact of election, of this election year, changes in leadership and direction. We do know that in the state level, every 4 years, we have to talk again with the education secretary, and then they always change the direction of what we are doing. And we know that education is important to have the long-term view and not only the short term. So we do also have 2 new recent materials. One is the studies of the teachers training for education, challenge and opportunities, also free for download in our website. And this is just came out of the oven. It's also the suggestion of how to integrate this in the curriculum. And now we are running a course for managers, school managers, and education networks manager to really open space at the curriculum and make this real and in practice. And we understand, we understand that having the skills, it's important, and it's a right. And so we need to do it right now and as fast as we can for the whole society. So this is my contact. Please let me know if you have any doubt. And thank you so much. It's a great opportunity. Thank you, Fernando.
Okay, thank you, Patricia, for the presentation and the activities developed by Palavra Aberta. And I would like to thank the people that are following us by YouTube. And the final presentation, people, will be performed by me. I will share a file here in a couple of seconds. Sorry. Is this... Just a moment. Yes, please, Vitor. Yes, abrir a link, open the link there, please, Vitor. No, I think close there. Yes. So this presentation is based on another important topic we think about information integrity is the scientific freedom, because especially last years with some political movements, the science is under risk in a couple of situations inside and outside the Brazilian context. And taking account this, we dedicated our research as well for these discussions involving scientific freedom, democracy, communication, and especially artificial intelligence effects. And I put some ideas in this presentation about suggestions and proposals for these topics, trying to dialogue with other presentations here, taking account some principles and ideas dedicated to open science as well, because we have some paradox in our academic activities, you know, about freedom and some contexts more or less stimulating the science, or sometimes with some difficulties and challenges in terms of our work. To exemplify it, I would like to thank you to follow or to look for more information about this documentary. I don't know if you watch it. It's Science in the Crosshairs, in a free translation from Portuguese into English. This documentary produced by Rafael Figueiredo interviewed 4 Brazilian scientists, and these people were under risk, especially during the former federal government. And with this, I think it's possible to exemplify some periods when the government and other public powers not necessarily protect or stimulate the science, but in the opposite way, especially in these 4 cases, sometimes the public powers and enterprise could be a risk for scientific activities. And it's possible to follow and to localize and find out more information about it in a couple of research about it around the world, systematizing information about harassment, intimidation, political and institutional pressure, and in some cases, physical and sexual assault. No, especially in the women case is important topic, and I think it's important to include these discussions in this kind of seminars like this activity here. To exemplify it is possible by this link, for example, follow a report produced by The Conversation indicating this impressive number of scientists reporting intimidation and harassment over a 5-year period, especially in this period between 2020 and 2025. And I think it's an important topic, some kind of self-reflection. No? This topic, the subject, including the problems inside and with sometimes not necessarily a permission, but a connivance from their own institutions. And with this, it's important to mention some reports of bullying in academia activities, including physical threats, violence, and unwanted sexual behavior. Of course, especially in this period of emergence of autocratic activities, Merle mentioned some examples of this, and the coronavirus period could be more possible to make this diagnosis. And if you have interest, for example, this report produced by the colleagues in Sweden show some similar situations in terms of this autocratization process turning viral in some countries around the world. And to summarize these next slides, in the last years, it emerged this idea of science-side, describing the destruction of scientific infrastructure in terms of war, political repression, and ideological perception effects, not just in countries under war, but around the global perspective. It's possible to localize this form of violence involving problems inside and outside the institutions. And to point out this topic, this gender involving female scientists risk are important as well because of this kind of sexist attacks and threats of sexual violence inside and outside higher education institutions, and including some kind of power imbalance and interests from institutions into public powers, and in terms of corporations' pressures as well. I don't know if you know this concept about chilling effect in terms of journalism, in terms of other important institutions that produce information and systematizing data in terms of the effects of civil society and other companies that produce effect in the society interests, social interests, sorry. And this chilling effect in the academic as well is an important topic for our discussion about information integrity, with a lot of consequences and impacts in learning, research, and extension activities. So to finalize my presentation, I put in this next slide some information about an important report mentioned directly or indirectly by Victor in the beginning of this morning. We are trying to establish this permanent contact with United Nations institutions because UN, ONU in Portuguese, produced this report about information integrity based on these 5 principles: the idea of societal trust and resilience, the health incentives connected by these topics about information integrity, public empowerment, independent, free, and pluralistic media. Betty and Yonty talked about it, and I think it's an important point to point out as well, especially in these topics inside the report, and transparency and research. So in the in the report, it's possible to follow more information about these ideas and concepts connected by these topics already mentioned by me, and to summarize and to point out some key commitments. I think it's very important in terms of challenges and proposals, Patricia. Think and organize some public policies and activities, including, of course, universities, about the need to promote media and information literacy and public education on digital risks, especially in the Brazilian case with ECA Digital, no? You know this terminology, developed especially from the next year. I think these topics are more present in the agenda, in the public agenda. The idea and the need dedicated to foster transparency and accountability of online platforms, and I appreciated, Betty, the idea of the high level of transparency in terms of media, no, in the journalism activities, especially in the journalism, but not just in journalism way. The need and the idea of the independent journalists being more stimulated. Yonty, I think, expressed, information about the experience in Chicago, stimulated experience, in my point of view. And these new scenarios with artificial intelligence that we analyze, and if you have time and interest, it's possible to follow some ideas, including Vitor Blotta ideas and colleagues from USP, in this book, produced and released last year. This book is one of the results of our research dedicated to communication and democracy in Brazil and Germany with the support of CAPES and DAD. And there, in the book, and of course, as the consequence of these seminars, since Salvador, Merle, crossing the country by Brasilia and São Paulo, we, I think, have more convictions about the needs, about shared priorities, including more discussions about democracy, human rights, and public trust, the need that we have inside and outside academia to talk about ethics, platform governance, and disinformation, including the discussion about regulation that we have had since the first session of our seminar. Understanding the opportunities in terms of education, cooperation, and civic participation, and I suspect Beth to talk about it, but of course, reinforcing the role of the universities in these discussions and these possibilities to foster the debate and the public policies dedicated to information integrity, communication, democracy. Thank you, people, for your attention. Muito obrigado. And right now, we will have time to these questions and answers and suggestions. I will reinforce the need of your patience with these technological tries and attempts to be inclusive with the colleagues around the world, and especially the Yonty's presentation. Juliano couldn't be with us because, yes, he had an appointment there in the Unicap, in the University of Catholic University of Pernambuco, but we count on the participation in presence with Mela, Betty, Vitor, Patricia, and Yonty online, okay? And Michel is following us, a great thing, Michel. Merci beaucoup. Michel is following us by YouTube. Michel is sick, people, but is part of our team as well. Okay, Michel Leroy, un abraço. And with this, please, we count on your interventions, questions, comments. Maybe you can be there, Patricia, Merle, and Vitor. And yes, it's important to be here because we are recording and transmitting by ECA's channel on YouTube. And with this microphone in this position is strategic to the transmission. Who will be the first people after this merchandising, this advertising? I count on your participation, please. At least one person. Please, yeah. If you cannot be comfortable to talk in English, please speak em português, ok, pessoal? Se alguém tiver dificuldade de falar inglês, pode falar em português. A gente faz aqui a tradução simultânea. Então, se vocês puderem já se aproximar, e aí vocês se apresentam, por favor, tá? Com o nome, instituição. Obrigado.
Good morning. My name is Elton. I am student in the PPG-Com at ECA USP. I think another important topic about right of information and integrity of information is open government. And we had bad news recently with USA leaving the open government partnership. That is, we had a political decision against transparency of the most powerful country that was one of the founders of the OGP. In Brazil, for example, the open government partnership played an important role in approval of the freedom of information, the freedom of information law. Brazil remains in the OGP, but I don't know if this initiative is still strong to promote access of information around the world, and I'm worried about this. So I want to know, how do you think about this?
You talked a lot about social media, and you talk about filter bubbles. And I would like to ask, how do you think us as journalists can fight the filter bubbles to spread information? Because like the war, one side of the media only see like the USA version or the Russia version, and the other side of the media only see the Iran version or the Ukraine version. How you can journalists break this cycle?
Hi, I wanted to know your opinion about the importance of teaching history to media literacy, because we talked about like the present and stuff, but I wanted to know, because like we have Brazil and Germany, and both countries have a history of dictatorships and media control. So I wanted to know if you guys believe that's an important factor to talk about, to preserve like media pluralism and literacy. Because also when we talk about the US, I do believe there's a lot of history of oppression and stuff, but that's not really recognized as it is in Brazil and Germany. And the US is where most of like social media is like located. So I wanted to know your opinion about this type of historical discussions.
Good morning. I want to ask for her, how were the process to be a journalist, to be a creator of a website, an app, to help other journalists? How were the process? How were the difficulties? How were all the things that you had to do about this?
Anyone else? People? No? Please.
Fica em
português.
Alguém vai ter que traduzir a minha pergunta. Você estava falando sobre pós-verdade. Eu queria saber se na sua pesquisa você também considerou, porque tem essas nuances do que é falso e o que é verdade, mas tipo assim, a gente aprende que o jornalismo nunca é literalmente factual, ele normalmente sempre pula um pouco para essa imparcialidade. Eu queria saber se na sua pesquisa você utilizou, sabe, se você considerou muito essa questão de analfabetismo funcional, sabe, que estamos vivendo muito aqui no Brasil, sobre as pessoas lerem, mas elas não conseguirem entender o que elas estão lendo. Então, eu queria saber se na sua pesquisa você também considerou isso para falar sobre essa pós-verdade.
Mary, you try to translate. I don't know if it's possible for you to understand this idea of functional illiteracy, because here we have, a couple of years a discussion about the high level of people that read and not necessarily understand that the people are reading, no? And the question, more or less, please correct me if I didn't understand correctly, is if you take in account in your research this kind of functional illiteracy, this some kind of difficulty to understand that the people read and understand that the people read in your research. Because qualquer outro argumento daí faria diferença nisso?
É porque eu falei assim, o jornalismo é sempre inclinado sempre para um lado. Eu queria saber se ela considerou isso, ela tipo... foi mais ou menos.
Yeah, because sometimes, or a couple of times, or every time, the journalist has a bias, no? And with this bias in a side, and by the other side, this difficult to understand the contents, maybe isso vai fazer diferença, é isso?
Yeah.
Maybe it will make difference in the reception of the news. Não sei se você quer agregar alguma coisa aí, Beth.
No, I think the problem is the cognitive mood of our society, because they are so involved on the social media and on scrolling that most of people couldn't really read. They see what's in front of them in the screen, and then go ahead. So keep scrolling all the time. There's a movement now about against stop scrolling, but it's normal to scroll and to pass superficially in the information, and how this could impact the idea of disinformation, misinformation, and how some journalistic outlets could profit to make some tendency of the content or to create some bubbles of some kind of content that it's not really true, or no, you know? Yeah. If you want to answer.
With the last question or the first one? Okay.
All of them.
So many questions. Let me think. Maybe combining all of the questions a bit, because you were focusing more on like the regulatory things and also how we can connect on a country level. And so, for example, on the European, from the European perspective, answering your question, so for us, what is really important is this kind of, when you see the platformization, so all the platforms kind of hold the power. It's no longer the US leaving an agreement, or Brazil, or Germany, for example. It's really like how we can also regulate these platforms. And for example, in Europe, we have a lot of debate about this, how we can kind of regulate platforms, also when it comes to the spread of deepfakes, for example. And also when in our projects we had interviews with fact checkers, and they were all saying that, yes, fact checking is great and it's an important thing that we're doing, but what we're missing is really legislative work on the country, on the national level, but also on a European level, because I feel like a national government within Europe doesn't hold really that much power, but it needs to be more on the European level. But what we're failing at is kind of really holding the platforms accountable. So we have different, for example, the DSA, the European government also has an AI Act now on how to regulate AI use on these platforms. But I mean, you can write so much on paper, but in practice it looks totally different. And Meta or X, they are not always interested in hearing the regulations by the European government, yes. So I feel like there are things happening now, talking about the European perspective, and I would also be interested to hear what my Brazilian colleagues have to say about that. But it's only slowly happening, and I feel like journalists can only do so much if there are no regulations really in place. So that is kind of something focusing on your question. So maybe also your Brazilian perspective, I would be interested to hear as well.
No, I think small opinion about regulation. Like in Europe, it's a slow process, and it's a process that now here in Brazil is, let's see, ignored or censored by the politicians, by the government. In real, no one, although journalism and although media people who works with through and a good information, although this kind of group, social group, the other groups in Brazil are making regulation process something slow, very slow.
Very, very slow.
Yeah.
But we do have one good information, or we did the first step. We took the first step with ECA Digital, the digital new law for safety of children and teenagers. In the digital space is a kind of regulation for platforms and social media and internet. So for example, so I guess we're not. It was the first step, I guess. Yeah. Well, of course, we need to regulate all the digital space without censor or information or the free flow of information. But I guess it was the first step. To answer your question, I don't have the answer, but I will bring some point of views. First of all, I think we are facing a new scenario for freedom of expression and access to information. We do have here the law of Lei de Acesso à Informação, the Information Access Law, since 2011. But the practice of this law is not natural. We'd have to always remind that we have this law to ask for information, for public information that has, for the public interest, those information. So I have all journalism and all papers that say, I asked this information by the lie. So we have to, it's not natural. We have to enforce this law. In the world scenario, I was looking here for UNESCO reports that world trends in freedom of expression and media development reports, which warns of a serious 10% global decline in freedom of expression since 2012. So this report also highlights several troubling trends: the intensification of armed conflicts, war. Someone here asked about how to cover war without bias or without one only point of view or one only narrative. So this report showed its challenge, increasing of information manipulation and interference by malicious actors. And malicious actors can be the ones who wants to give this only perspective, but also governments. So we do have malicious actors in all kinds, including the use of AI, so the LLM models. So, and the growing economic fragility of independent media without financial problems. We do not have independent media, and rising efforts to control or restrict it in persistent violence against journalists, with 85% of killings remained unpunished. So I will suggest that you look for this report that shows our challenge that we have for the agenda of information integrity, to the lack of understanding of the importance of media, the independent media, or the whole system of media, the integrate system like public media, community media, community journalism, and also the trained the media landscape, the traditional media. So we do need to understand this. How can I say this? The system, the connections between all kind of media outlets that need to work together for us to have more diversity, and also point of views that will be different.
It's something complex here in Brazil, in the media system, in the business media system, to make coalitions, which is very important in this case of freedom of expression and open access transparency. I think we had a successful experience of coalition in the COVID, that the journalism made really an effective action on this. I think now it's important to create another coalition, maybe, no, around transparency, around freedom of expression, around or against violence and harassments, diverse harassments to journalists and the media outlets. I think it's time to reorganize our sector. I would like to, I don't know if you students know that here in ECA, we had an observatory for freedom of expression. The name is OBCOM. We have some activities. The site is open here, and we have a tool that is measuring or mapping, that's better, mapping how violence and harassments are, the state of violence and harassment against media and journalists since 1992 to 25 now. So you have a huge database that it's online, and you could cross the information and have an idea what's happening there. It's in English also. So.
Just a little bit, Fernando.
Deixa eu falar.
Okay, of course. Só queria falar isso.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I'm looking at YouTube and everything, so I'm also kind of following. So thank you, everybody, for your answers. I want to address several of the questions with a similar answer, because when we are talking about media literacy, which I didn't talk about media literacy in my presentation because I agree with what the other panelists were saying. There is a triangle that we need to think about. There is the media regulation, which it's very tricky and it takes a lot. And as you can see in Brazil, it's much more advanced than in the US, for example. I don't see much options for media regulation, although there is starting to move something in the US with the recent court order with Meta and Google. But there is media regulation, there is media literacy, which is education and having people learning to do it. And then there is the personal responsibility. And that can be on the journalist and on the audience themselves. So not one will solve it. It's only the three together working, which is very, very tricky, as I said. So history, the question about history is super important, and it's a perspective. One of the big questions of media literacy is what might other people think? What is omitted? What perspective we didn't include in this message? So part of what I was trying to say is that the community media kind of practice that I was sharing is trying to get the perspective of the neighborhood. But when we're talking about reporting of the war, for example, I know for myself, I'm going to several different outlets. I'm not going just to AP or the New York Times. I'm looking at different people. I have friends in Iran. I have friends in Palestine, in Egypt, in Jordan, in Israel. And I'm in the US also. I'm asking, I'm seeing what they're seeing. I'm understanding the bias of their media outlet, but I'm combining the information to try to create this, you know, the story about the elephant and the 5 blind people from different angles. So I'm trying to construct this elephant by myself from the different biases. And that's what good journalism is, when you're taking different perspectives, putting them together and construct the reality as it's much more complex than one article. So that's really kind of the gist of the answering all those questions, the making it, you know, the understanding. The last questions about understanding is when there is those different perspectives come together. Because reading is one thing, but how do you digest that? It's each one with their own media literacy skills. So that's my quick answer. I'm happy to elaborate more.
Maybe also trying to combine some of your questions and answering them, maybe starting with the history one. So in Germany, it's very specific because our media system isn't that old, because you have to imagine after the Second World War, where media was heavily used for propaganda, our entire media system was totally like structured from scratch. So the Allied forces kind of created this system where we have a strong public broadcasting, so 2 different companies doing the public broadcasting, which should be ideally be completely neutral, and then of course the private media sector. So I would say it's very important to kind of combine the history with then teaching journalism. So I think especially in Germany you cannot go without it. So you have to combine both to understand how our system kind of functions. Still today, it's very much this like public broadcasting with the private sector. And for example, we have a strong right party, which is growing, and they are kind of trying to target the public broadcasting because they think, they always say, no, it's just telling the left story and not like ours. It's like totally left, totally green, totally liberal. And so they are really trying to target the public broadcasting, taking us back all those years ago when media were used for propaganda. So I think it's important to have all this context to understand now why they are targeting public broadcasting in Germany. And then also now going to the question about the filter bubbles, I think especially there it is so important because our right-wing party, for example, is very strong on social media. So there are a lot of young people, especially sadly young men, who are gravitating towards these like right narratives on TikTok, on Instagram. So they are really in their bubble. So it's essential to kind of get like other content in there as well. But I think there we're again subject to the power of these platforms, like the strong platformization. So let's see how regulations can maybe help to kind of diversify this algorithm. But we have good information out there, and I would say our public broadcasting system is still very strong. So if you only, for example, follow one of their accounts, you would get a totally different input as well. So that I would say is very important here. And then coming to the question about how our project kind of evolved in practice and how we as journalists were involved in this. So I feel like it's fact-checking is oftentimes seen as kind of a silo. So we have fact-checkers here, and then we have the journalists there. But they are not really working together, and oftentimes we have fact-checking after the articles are published and not like in the process. So it was interesting for us to involve media practitioners, AI specialists, fact-checkers, journalists, to put them all at one table to create something that is useful for all of them. And something which was also really important for us, Brazil is a huge country, for example, but in Europe we have super small countries sometimes with languages that are also super small. So this tool can be used by everyone, making also these smaller countries with smaller languages also being able to use this tool, because you know, disinformation doesn't stop at a national border. It doesn't look if it's France or Germany. It travels like through all these countries. So in practice for us, it was important to connect all these small countries with really small languages. It's probably just one area in Brazil, which is a whole country in Europe. So that was also important for us in practice when we did that, to give some agency to these small countries, these small languages, to maybe also burst these filter bubbles in these areas, because there are some countries which are under very strong Russian influence. So it's important for them to kind of have a tool like that, to be more free, to have like an AI tool that can look at all these articles in just a second. So that was important for them, because their staff is really small, and it's maybe just one big newsroom, maybe 10 fact-checkers sometimes just in one country. So it's very, very small, and they don't have the funds oftentimes to do something like that for their own language. So that was also something that came into this process, to have this international focus with different European countries.
I think two things: history and the training of journalists. History gives us context. It's very important to know the context. And here in Brazil, journalism, it's quite old. It begins in 1808, so we have issues since that moment. And there is a book that the academics don't like it, the author and so on, but it's a very interesting book called Shut Up Journalist, Cala a Boca Jornalista, from a journalist, an old journalist that I think he's passed away, Fernando Jorge. And he offers a historical view of how journalism as media outlet or the professional has silenced by different society entities, you know. So it's important to understand that to arrive to our moment now, and continue to work in context, to work and to relate what's happening now to the history, to the understanding of what's happened with our society in this evolution or involution, you know. This is one thing. Another thing that I want to tell you, it's how Yonty said that he does not believe, but his information sources are multiple, not only the formal ones or the traditional media outlets, and because it's important to have contacts around the world. I know you are very young, but it's important to build your network of colleagues and other journalists here in another countries or in another cities in Brazil and other states. Establish contacts and maintain these contacts, because this will be very important to your career development. Okay.
Thank you for the questions. Muito obrigado. I just wanted to remember a talk from a scholar, Brazilian scholar who works at Virginia University. I don't want to forget his name now. He's a specialist on disinformation and okay, well, I'm going to remember his name, but he also stressed about the importance of other institutions for reliable information that we can access together with journalistic sources. So he talked about, his name is Davi Nemer. And he says that public libraries and community libraries are spaces where history cannot be easily forged, falsified, and it's a space where you have a literacy about which sources are reliable and how to seek information. And actually some of the computers, when you access in public libraries, they don't have the filters of your the algorithm recommendations of our own interests from the platform. So I think this is an interesting idea, and also connects us with also governmental information agencies and other public information organizations and professions that I think have to come together with this to create this movement. And in this sense, we can also think about the idea of journalism and public information as a public good. I think this is very important and very valuable, but it doesn't seem to be enough. And maybe we can also learn from indigenous communities and Amerindian philosophy that thinks about the environment as a subject, and rivers having a personhood and a right of themselves, and how we have to learn with that. So if our dignity is an idea of personal integrity, mind and psychological body integrity, what is the integrity of information if we see information as a being, as a subject of rights? And in this sense, what does this information scenario tells us? It is sick. It is so it has a lot of problems. So as we try to see the environment, the earth, nature with other lenses, maybe we can see information and the public sphere and our communication, interpersonal communication, mediatic communication, as a sort of being that has rights of its own. Maybe this is a new imaginary that we have to think about in order to gather people and institutions and organizations to empower information integrity. That's some of the ideas. Thank you.
So, thank you, Vitor, Betty, Merle, Patricia, Yonty. Just to finish, people, and in complement of including more information about Vitor topics, is possible access a podcast dedicated to how misinformation is poisoning Brazilian democracy with Davi Nemer and Thalita Fernandes on the internet. And I think this point is very connected with the first comment question from the audience here about the need that we have to keep and expand the public government and journalist conditions to work and to make more accountable and transparent. And tomorrow we will have, I think, a good session with José Roberto de Toledo and Thais Bilenque, former students from School of Communication and Arts at the in the University of São Paulo. Please be here with us in this discussion with them in Portuguese. I think it will be more stimulate you the interactions and the contact with this experience in this language, in our language, and we will keep in contact people in these discussions involving our Brazilian and German universities, the public power colleagues, and social and civil entities like Educamedia, initiatives organized by initiatives like Palavra Aberta, the Open World. And to conclude, I would like to ask you an applause to Alexandre and Djalma, because they helped a lot, to be possible these activities today. Sorry with some problems that we have had to organize these connections, but I think it's a good effort to expand our debate and to show the importance of the universities in this kind of public problem and its challenges and possibilities. Thank you, people. See you tomorrow.
Ah, verdade. Põe o Yonty na tela?